How about that? Our next act is going to be from Mr. Raoul Drapeau, who tells me he won the funny joke contest on New Year's Eve here at Ashby Ponds. So give him a round of applause, Mr. Raoul Drapeau.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, nice to see you all. Thank you, Miriam. My name is Raoul Drapeau, and I've been a resident here for a little over a year, and I listen to things that people say and pick up some stories. I got a few of those stories for you today, and you can be guaranteed that these are all 100% truthful. Does that sound familiar? Okay, there were three guys who, men, and they all had a little bit of hearing problems, as many of us do. They decided that they were going to execute their friendship by having a golf game at the golf course right down the road here. And so it turns out to be a windy March day. And so they did their thing at the booth, and they were walking outside, and one of them commented that, boy, it's windy today. And the second one said, it's not Wednesday, it's Thursday. And the third one said, I'm thirsty too, let's go have a beer. So with that kind of approach, they meant that communicating their scores to one another might have led to some odd scores, but there was also a lot of us do volunteering work, and one fellow did volunteering over here at Maple Grove. And I heard that he considered himself a considerable performer, and he would go over there once a week, and he'd tell jokes and little stories, and there'd be polite applause, and he enjoyed himself. And one day he decided he was instead going to add a harmonica. He had one of these big old concert harmonicas. So he took that with him, and he gave his little performance, and he felt very satisfied with himself. And it was a little polite applause after he got finished. And he said, by way of goodbye, he said, I hope you get better. And from the back, there was a little voice that said, I hope you get better too. Yeah. As you know, this very venue here is used sometimes for plays. And there was a play coming up, the venue of the site of which was 18th century England, so a lot of fancy costumes with feathers and such. And there was a guy who his whole life he had wanted to be an actor. Never played any acts before in his life, but he could memorize lines. He thought he would be pretty good. So the theater group here was going to put on this 18th century play, and so he signed up and interviewed with the director. And the director said, well, listen, you've got no experience at all. I can't put you on the stage right away. He said, but I'll make you the understudy to the lead actor, and maybe that'll satisfy you. We'll see how you do about memorizing the lines. So he did. He memorized all the lines. He was doing pretty well. And there was a key line at the beginning of the second act when the curtains would open, the stage would be flooded by light, and there'd be a tremendous explosion sound of cannons. And the lead actor was supposed to say, hark, the cannons roar. He said, I can do that. So as it happened, the day before the key performance, the first performance, the lead actor fell down the stairs and broke his leg. And so the understudy, the director said to the understudy, you're it, don't screw it up. And so, again, he practiced everything, and the day came, and the act started, Act 1. Act 1 went pretty well. He did okay. He was pleased with himself. Act 2 starts. So the curtains close, the lights come up, and there's a break during the intermission. Meanwhile, he's backstage practicing that key line. He doesn't want to screw it up. So the key line, again, is hark, the cannons roar. So he tried all the different intonations he can think of. Hark, the cannons roar. Hark, the cannons roar, and so on. Finally, he got an intonation he was happy with. And Act 2 is about ready to start. And the house lights go down, the audience quiets, the orchestra begins to play its prelude, and then the curtain opens. The stage is now flooded with light. He steps out on the stage. Boom! The sound effects go off. He turns and he shouts, "What the hell was that?" So his career as an actor might be a little shortcut at that point, but he retired. Many times if you're sitting at dinner with some new folks, you'll talk about your own personal backstory, that is to say, why it is that you came here. And there were three guys I overheard over in windows, and they were talking about their backstories, and one guy says to the others, well, my story is very simple. He said, I owned a furniture store, big furniture store, a warehouse, really. And I had two sons, but they weren't interested in the business, a doctor and a lawyer. I was getting close to retirement age, and I wasn't going to get much money for the business. So I thought, what am I going to do? And then one day, there was a big fire on the weekend. Whole place burned to the ground. I said, well, I'm 75 years old. It's time for me to retire. So I took my money, the insurance money, and I retired. And the second fellow, he turned to the second fellow and asked, what's your story? He said, well, I had a lumber warehouse and provided lumber to all the builders around in the entire area. And again, I had no kids, but nobody to turn the business over to. And again, one night on the July 4th weekend, big fire, whole place burned to the ground, nothing left but ashes. I'm not going to try to rebuild that. So I took my money and I retired. That's why I'm here. Turned to the third fellow, what's your story? Third fellow said, well, no fire was involved in my state. I had a textile mill. A textile mill was stationed right by the river. And I got my power for the looms and so on, electricity from the river. And I was doing pretty well. Again, nobody to turn the business over to. And one fine spring day, there was a huge flood. Came down, the water overflowed the banks of the river, got into the building of the plant, and wiped out all my the raw material as well as the finished product, got into the machinery, ruined the machinery. I'm done with it. So I took my insurance money and I retired. That's why I'm here. So there's a bit of a pause. And the first guy says, how do you start a flood? And as you know, this same facility here is used for church services on Sundays. And there was one particular Sunday, a couple sitting together, husband and wife, and in the middle of the service, she turns to her husband and she says, he whispers, I just passed a silent fart. What should I do? And her husband turns to her and says, get a new battery for your hearing aid. As you all know, there's a medical center here, and the guy was feeling pretty sick, and he went with his wife. He didn't hear very well either, as many of us don't. He went down to the medical center to see Dr. Rowe, and his doc says, I'm not feeling too well. I don't know what it is, kind of generally bad feelings, and I'd like you to check it out and see what it is. And so the doctor goes through all the usual clinical checks and hearing and blood pressure and listening to the chest and the heart and so on. He says, I don't know, I can't quite figure this thing out. So we're going to need to run some tests. And so doctor says, well, I'm going to need to have a stool sample, a urine sample, and a semen sample. And the guy didn't quite hear him right. He says to his wife, what did he say? What did the doctor say? Doc says he needs your underpants. And I'll conclude with a little story about, you've all been on the Ashby Ponds bus to go to different events and so on. So there's a bus full of us going to the theater, someplace, a local place. And so the bus loads up and everybody gets on the bus and the bus is progressing along. And the driver feels a little tap, tap, tap on his shoulder. And the woman behind him says, would you like some peanuts? Okay. So he takes the peanuts and they're pretty good. Another 10 minutes later, she taps him again. Would you like some more peanuts? I guess. So he takes them, he munches them down. And at the third time, she taps him again, and he says, don't you like peanuts? Why aren't you eating them? She said, they're bad for my teeth. They get stuck in my teeth. Well, then why do you buy them? Oh, I just love to suck the chocolate off them. Thank you.
I'm doing a Geico commercial. Okay, so anyway, we're going to start a duo because we're going to have to put our jokes together, you know. So I told him I was going to tell one today, but I didn't have to. So he's already heard this. So I'm going to let you give the punchline, okay?
Okay, if I remember.
George was celebrating his 82nd birthday, and his kids thought it was time to give him something really nice. So they sent to his door this really sexy woman. She knocked on his door, and he opened it, and she said, "Happy birthday. I'm here to give you super sex." And he said,
I'll take the soup.
"See, it would work, right? Thanks. All right." Thank you.